This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight it's Can My Boss Do That? So we're going to talk about answering your questions on everything from employment law, drug testing. Can your boss tell you what you can and cannot put on your social media? Can they fire you for what you put on your social media? We'll talk about working conditions. Can your boss read your email? Call in your questions. There's also some new proposed laws, some changes potentially for non-competes if that figures into your workplace. The 31 Law Call number 256-536-0077. You can also email a question. You can email a question on any legal topic any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we'll pull some out. We have some of your email questions tonight. Getting us started tonight, Will League is here from Timberlake and League. Glad to have you here tonight.
All right, Sharon. Good night. How are you?
Doing well. We're going to be talking about Can My Boss Do That? But we always get started with a You Make the Law Call video. We've pulled some video. This is courtesy of YouTube. We've got some video. Typical day, you know, you're used to being out on the highway. Let's see if we can take a look at that. So you're out on the interstate. We've got so many places around the Huntsville area that's got elevated portions. So you're out driving along. You have no idea that something is about to happen. Hold on and watch for a black SUV that's about to come up. You know, you're looking at the guy in the car and you're thinking that's going to be the problem. Okay, hold on, right here. Out of nowhere.
So, you know, it looks like he either jerked to the left or he had a blowout. Look, the guy's running for his life right there.
And over. And we understand that everybody came out, somehow everybody came out okay out of this wreck. Unbelievable. So if something like this happens to you,
Sharon,
what do you do?
Well, the question I think we had from whoever sent this in was, is the person's parked, is he liable? Everyone else has a last clear chance to miss this guy. And so you have to, maintain a proper lookout and maintain your vehicle in a safe manner. And so as he's coming down, he jerks to the left or has a blowout. In the case he jerks to the left, he overreacted, he was negligent. If there was a blowout, there could have been a defense of a mechanical defect, or we've had cases similar where, let's say, the vehicle had just gone into repairs and maybe the lug nuts weren't put on properly. We've had tires fall off. And so if there is an imperfection or some type of defect in the vehicle that caused that, then there could be a claim against whoever repaired that vehicle, or if you knew there was an issue with your vehicle and you put it on the road, you could be liable in that sense. The guy who pulled over to the right, he should be, with regard to liability, I don't think he's going to have any.
And somebody's telling me that there was debris on the road as part of the problem. Okay, if you got debris on the road, does that change things for you?
It does. And so the law in Alabama is, let's say there's debris on the road and the other driver's gone. You can make an underinsured motorist claim for any injuries you sustain as long as you can corroborate that particular evidence and make sure that you can prove that there was foreign matter, foreign material on the road that caused or contributed, to your collision. Again, a defense could be you should have seen that and had time to avoid it. And so it depends on the facts of each circumstance, Sharon.
Gotcha.
So, it's
things happen, but
they do.
Yeah.
They do.
When in question, go see a lawyer that does that kind of thing.
That's why we handle, we handle them all the time, and it's crazy how often cars will have a defect to cause a catastrophic, issue. So
Tonight, can my boss do that?
And sadly, most of the time, yes. So, we have the space industry, defense industry, a lot of government contracts, sole proprietorships, a lot of manufacturing coming up. What are the laws? There's not many unions in the South, so not a lot of protection there. So what are your rights? Alabama is an at-will employee state, which means you can be hired or fired for no reason or any reason, so long as it's not a constitutional protected age, discrimination, sex, all those types of things. So we've got an expert with us, and oftentimes we'll work with Eric Artrip on a lot of these discrimination, harassment cases. Eric, you see some of the worst stuff. What kind of cases in the harassment or the employment field that you look at?
Well, we see a lot of different kinds of cases, including age discrimination, discrimination against disabilities. And then also you've got the Title VII cases where it protects people from discrimination based on workplace minority status. So if a person is the only female or the only male in an environment, or one of very few, and they're fired or has an action taken against them because of that, no other reason, then that can be a violation of the law, and there's something they can do.
Okay, you were telling me too about some potential upcoming law. Tell me about upcoming non-compete law changes. What's happening?
Right. The current administration just introduced a rule, a change to the rule on Tuesday. It's open for 6 months of comment, so it's not a law just yet. But basically what that would do is take away non-competes in the United States. You still would have non-solicitation. You can't go after your boss's customers and things like that. But it would take away the idea that they can keep you in a place where you don't want to be and you have to stay just because you're afraid of being sued.
Interesting. And you said there are even some fast food places that make their employees sign non-competes. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, remarkably so. We've seen some franchise fast food places that are operating here in Huntsville, make teenage people in their 20s sign a non-compete saying that if they leave, they're going to be sued if they go and make a sandwich for somebody else for the next 6 months.
And for those who don't know, it's a simple, so if a lot of times you see it in sales reps. You're at sales rep company A, you have all this business, and you get hired by B that's a block away. Well, the law right now has to be reasonable as to duration, how long the covenant is not to compete, and the geographic region, how far can you not go. And so Eric's right. So they're looking at that law that would take that out and make things more competitive. Depends on what side you're on. If you've got a proprietary interest or a sales force that you want to keep together, and if they can't work in their hometown, if it's reasonable as to geographic time and scope, the courts right now will enforce it. But if this law is passed, that will take that out, and things are going to change.
Very interesting. Okay, we got this email question in, and if you've got a question, call in the 31 Law Call number, 536-0077. We got this email question in from April. April had written in, I've been a secretary for 3 years. The company just changed managers, and the new manager called me in, and the first thing he said to me was, how's your health? I'm wondering why someone I've never met or had a conversation with is asking me this. I have MS, and yes, I did miss some days, but had doctor's certificate for that. He then told me that I was being let go because I'd missed too many days. Do I have any recourse?
Eric, what do you think? If they come in and say, hey, they ask her questions about her health, then all of a sudden fire her for some other reason.
Well, yeah, if they fired her for some other reason, like she was, they caught her stealing, or she was on her phone too much, or a variety of different things. But if it's really about the health issue and her ability, or trying to take time off to treat for a legitimate condition, that could be a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That requires that employers reasonably accommodate a disability. And one of the reasonable accommodations is going to be time to treat. So if she needs an hour off, every Thursday to go treat or something along those lines, as long as that accommodation is going to be reasonable, like you can't just say, well, I'm going to take 20 hours off every week. But an hour here and there is probably going to be by most courts deemed to be reasonable, and she may have a claim under the ADA.
Okay. What are the areas that you can't fire someone? Because if we're talking about Alabama, and we're saying your boss can pretty much fire you for anything. So then what can you bring a lawsuit over?
Right, and Eric, with regard to proof, so someone comes in and says, look, I was injured on the job, and all of a sudden you were fired 3 weeks later, couldn't do your job, and they make up, hey, you were late on a Tuesday last year, and they give you a reason. And they don't even have to give you a reason. Rarely will you find the email that says, hey, fire Sharon because she was injured on the way to the station. They're not going to put that. So how do you dance around that particular evidence?
Yeah, you and I do the same thing all the time. We know we can prove any case in two ways, circumstantial evidence or direct evidence. Direct evidence is just like you said, Sharon, you missed, we don't want people getting hurt on the job, and so we're going to go ahead and fire you. We don't get a lot of those kind of cases, but what we do is, you and I both, we look at the circumstances surrounding a legal situation and see if we can derive that intent. And if the termination is real close to when that person got injured on the job, let's say, and they've been working there for 2 or 3 years and never had a single problem, now all of a sudden they can't do anything right and they get fired, then we're going to look at that and we're going to say that might be a pretext. That might be something that they're trying to make up to get rid of this person. So just because they gave a reason doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of, what we would be looking at.
Gotcha. Right. We've got callers waiting. We've got Paul on the line with a question from Albertville. Hi, Paul. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight? Hey, Paul. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight? Do we have Paul? Let's try one more time. Paul from Albertville, what's your question tonight? Okay, let's assume that you can prove they fired me wrongly. what do I win? What do you get your job back, or do you get back pay, or do you get like a big award for having proven that they did this incorrectly?
Well, one of the things you can get is the pay you've missed out on. So the time that they fired you, if they fired you improperly, until the jury comes, they come back with a verdict in your favor. The pay between those two periods is called back pay, and it's one of the biggest measures of damages in these kind of cases. But you can also get attorney's fees, mental anguish, costs. There's a variety of different things that you can get. Sometimes you can even get front pay, in other words, from a time when the jury comes back going forward in certain cases.
Are you required to go back to work for that place, or are they required to take you back?
Well, usually that's kind of a negotiated thing. When we settle these kind of cases, it's usually a goodbye forever sort of deal.
Yeah, because I don't know that I want to go working for somebody that I sued and won the case, right? That seems really uncomfortable.
Eric, let me ask you this. So you prosecute, employment situations. What would you tell the employers? So let's say you got 30 employees versus 60 employees over that 50 threshold. We tell clients it's good to have an employee handbook to set out all the issues, and so you've got everyone understands both sides. Now the other side of that is, an at-will employee state, why even have a handbook? Because Alabama's laws, let's face it, favor the employer. So what are the benefits of having the handbook, and what are the downfalls for the employer standpoint?
I think your advice to your clients about having a handbook is absolutely right, because they do want to have a set of guidelines, and that makes it a little bit easier for employers to make a call whether to go ahead and terminate somebody's employment and how they're going to do it. As long as they follow their own employee handbook, then they're usually going to be pretty well protected. Also, we tell our clients, and we do represent several businesses, small businesses around town, and we usually try and tell them to document. So if there's a mistake happening, or if a mistake happens with an employee, let's go ahead and get it recorded in some fashion, via email or some kind of write-up, and so you build that history there, and that'll usually prevent a lawsuit.
We've got Wayne on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Wayne. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
I was terminated from my job October the 6th, just recently, last year. I've been on the job 30 years, and I had a light stroke, and I was trying to recuperate, and got a letter in the mail that saying I was terminated, involuntary terminated. What can I do about it?
What'd you do, Wayne, A, and B, did you have an employment contract?
No, I didn't have an employment contract, no.
What'd you do?
I was a machine operator.
Okay. Been there 30 years.
30 years.
Was there any type of requirement that, okay, you had to be able to do this, X, A, B, and C physically to do that job?
Well, I could do it. Yeah, I could do it.
Mm-hmm. And you sounds great. So is that something he can, Eric, what do you think? What would you need to know or to get some more information about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the questions that you were asking him already is very important. Is, what are the physical requirements of the job, and can he do them? If you can, then I think you may have a claim under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which again, just like we talked about a minute ago, does require reasonable accommodation if you need one at all. Sometimes people get sick. They may even have something that they're not really disabled for, like diabetes, but they say, well, you're too sick to work here, even though you could absolutely do the job. So I think the first stop for you is probably going to be the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission down in Birmingham, Alabama.
What qualifies for a disability?
A disability under the ADA is any permanent condition that affects one or more life functions. So you can have a case also, like I said, like diabetes, it's a permanent condition. It may not be disabling, but it's kind of what they call a regarded as case. Like, we don't trust you, we're not sure about you. And that's the kind of thing that the ADA protects as well.
Okay, they're telling us to take a break. We'll take a break, be right back answering your questions. If you're on the line, stay on the line. We'll be right back with more. Can my boss do that?
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call, where lawyers come to help. Your rights, your calls, live. Hosted by family law attorney Sharon Dovian, with the personal injury attorneys of one of the Valley's most respected law firms, Timberlake and League. Featuring the knowledge of managing partner Michael Timberlake, with millions of dollars awarded to his clients. And the experience of attorney Will League, a strong courtroom fighter known for his commitment to winning. And the fellow partners of Timberlake and League Heath Brooks and William Meservey. This is WAAY 30.
We're taking my boss with us, Will League from Timberlake and League. With us do that, we've got with us Will League from Timberlake and League. We've got Eric Artrup, who is with Mustando and Artrup out of Huntsville, and they do these kind of cases all the time. We were talking about some things. Can my boss do that?
Right, and looking at, the workforce has changed. The pandemic changed things. A lot of people are working from home, a lot of flex time. And at the break, we're talking about, well, things just aren't what they used to be. People don't work as hard as they used to, and I get it, and how all that flows downhill from generation to generation. But, things have changed. We have job openings. We have people to fill them, but there's this big gap. And we saw this thing on 60 Minutes about quietly quitting.
Yeah.
What's that? It's kind of anybody over 30, maybe over 35, 40, scratching their heads, but things are changing. Can my boss do a lot of the calls? Can my boss read our email? Yes, they can. If they own that domain name, if that computer's in their office, they can monitor your things. Often can they do, can they require drug testing? Usually they can, depending on what the nature, time frame, as long as it's reasonable. But again, an at-will employee state, you can be hired for any reason or no reason, so long as, again, it's not a federally or constitutional protected right. Eric, when you see cases about harassment, or whether it be, what are some of the more things that you see on a day-to-day? Breach of contract, or is it more, the Me Too movement with a lot of, I know you have some crazy cases with videos, and we see you, doing those from time to time. What are you seeing mostly over there?
Well, we see a couple of different types of discrimination case. Female discrimination takes three forms, basic three forms. Pregnancy discrimination, kind of a hostile work environment kind of situation, and the so-called glass ceiling kind of thing where females are not offered the opportunities for advancement their male colleagues are. So we see a good number of those cases. And the Americans with Disabilities Act is a big portion of our business as well, because there are a lot of people that have conditions and things like that that have to be accommodated or need to be accommodated in the workforce.
And some of those, with regard to the proof, Eric and I are working on a case. We're alleging that, some of you may remember the Athens City school system, where there was a fraud against the public school system to get money on behalf of the school system. We've named, all the principals, a lot of whom have pled guilty in federal court, but some of the defenses will be that they were just following orders. Again, if you know something's wrong. But, Eric, how are we going to address, let's say you've got a claim against a company, someone did something wrong, but they indicate they were just following orders, doing what the boss told them to do. Respondent superior, what do you think?
Well, yeah, the employer, you can be liable if you do something wrong, and you can be liable for doing that even if your boss told you to do it. What's really kind of bad about being in an at-will employment state is that, or one of the bad things is that you can't, let's say they ask you to do something you feel is wrong, and then you won't do it, so they fire you. Well, they can do that, and that's not against the law. There's no real public policy kind of protection in the state of Alabama and in most states. There's only a few right-to-work states. Most all the states are an at-will employment state.
When you say wrong, do you mean illegal?
Yeah, it could be illegal, could be unethical, could be just against your moral code. But if you refuse to do it and they fire you for it, then there's really nothing you can do about that.
That's interesting.
That is.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Paul from Albertville. Hi, Paul. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
I'm a consultant in the oil business, and I had to travel 1,600 miles to a job.
Okay.
And within 6 weeks, they got rid of me and didn't pay me on my travel and all that back home because they got someone else to do it for a whole lot cheaper as a consultant up there.
Okay.
And my question is there anything I can do to recover my money, because the company still owes me about $4,000 for the week?
Interesting.
Yeah, you certainly depend. If the company's in the same town that you live in, you can file in small claims court, write them a letter saying, hey, here's my back pay, prove it. There's only two ways to make them do it. Either they agree to, or if a court makes them. So let's say you sue them for a breach of contract. There's an agreement, you were going to be a consultant. Hopefully in that agreement it included any expenses that you incurred in furtherance of any business on behalf of the company. And if you can prove that you suffered expenses or you incurred expenses and they failed to pay, whether it be compensation, whether it be commission, oftentimes if they fail to pay a commission, there could be a treble damages or triple what your damages are if they're failing to pay commissions as promised to do. So there's several statutes that deal with exactly that. It's $4,000. You can go in small claims court, and you'd have to prove your case, or sit down with someone like Eric, who handles claims against employers.
Eric, you got any other ideas for him, or is that?
I think Will was exactly right. What he's got there is it's called detrimental reliance. The idea that he moved across country and relied to his detriment to the idea that they were going to give him a job and keep him on. And so when he did that and they didn't live up to their end of the bargain, it could be a breach of contract claim. So again, Will's exactly right. That's the best place for you to go, is probably small claims court against those folks.
These treble damages, it's interesting. Let's say you've got a commission and they failed to pay. Let's say you have $100,000 commission and they wantonly, intentionally failed to pay your commission.
Yeah.
Statute will require treble damages, where if you prove that they intentionally failed to pay your commission, instead of 100, it could be 300. And that's to punish people, because you want to keep commerce going. You don't want people stiffing people or breaching contracts. And so there should be some teeth in there if you knowingly violate a contract with regard to commissions and other employment benefits. There's some teeth in there to help you recover.
Okay. Eric, can they fire me for what I put on my social media in Alabama?
Yes, they can. That's,
okay.
That's one of the big questions we often get is, well, can they monitor my social media? Can they fire me for what's on there? They're not a governmental entity. These are private employers, and they can pretty much, they're not bound by the First Amendment. They don't have to respect your political views, and they can fire you for them.
And doesn't matter if I'm doing it off hours, they can do it.
Right.
Okay, let's take a break. Be right back, answering more of your questions. Can my boss do that? Stay with us. If you didn't get your question answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Eric Artrup. He is with Mastando and Artrup in Huntsville, 256-532-2222. Also check out MastandoArtrup.com. Here's how to get in touch with Will League, personal injury attorney with Timberlake and League. That's car accidents, medical malpractice, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way, and they will be on midday news tomorrow.
And the family law attorney, Sharon Doviat, child custody, divorce, 256-539-7337, SharonFamilyLaw.com.
Okay, time limits for these kind of cases. So it's not like the other kind of cases that we've talked about.
A little bit different. So if you're being discriminated against at the office, you have 180 days. You have to go to talk to the EEOC. They'll give you a right to sue letter, but you got to go through them first. So 2 years is really not it. Breach of contract, 6 years, but 180 days. You have to go to the EEOC to make that claim. And Eric, what are some of the other pitfalls?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is making sure that you get to the EEOC and go to eeoc.gov. You have to fill out a form, make sure you check all the boxes right.
So you can do that yourself, eeoc.gov, and do that form yourself.
You can, better to have an attorney with you, but yes, you can do it yourself.
Okay. Thanks for all your calls and questions tonight. Everybody have a safe week.
Good night.